Hi friends, and welcome. It's Bob and Fran, your healthy aging advocates and authors, and we are plant-based for life.
Today is very special for us as we will be talking with our own personal physician, Dr. Sven Jonsson. Dr. Jonsson is a family medicine specialist here in Western North Carolina, and he has over 36 years of experience in the medical field. Dr. Jonsson uses plant-based nutrition in his medical practice, treating, reversing, and also preventing chronic disease. We feel so fortunate to have him as our doctor and our friend. Now, at the end of our interview, we want to tell you about the Food Empowerment Project. It's about how our food choices can change the world.
So welcome, Dr. Jonsson, and thank you so much for taking some time out to visit with us and our viewers.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks for doing this, Bob and Fran. It's just super to have you doing this for all the folk out there and the great influence you have on so many people. Thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. We want to spread the word. I wonder if we could start our chat just by maybe telling us a little bit about your personal background and history.
Yes, I grew up in South Africa. And went to lots of schools, actually, I think 11 different schools. So we moved a lot and finished up at a boarding school in South Africa. It's an old British style schooling, and part of family is from Scandinavia and also from England and Wales. And so, you know, in South Africa, they follow the British medical training model. So it's a 7-year schooling instead of 4 years, but you go straight from high school into medical school. So you're very young. And I was really more sort of focused on engineering or even architecture. And about 6 months into my final year at the boarding school that I was going to, I decided to just think about medical school. I had a few family members who were involved in the medical field, an uncle who's a doctor, and never really thought about it until that point. I was doing well enough in school to consider it, and so I applied, and to my astonishment, they accepted me. So that's how it happened. So I wish I could give you a better story, but that's how it happened.
That's interesting. So I wanted to ask you then, how did you get from South Africa? What was the journey that took you to the United States, and where did you go in the States initially?
Yeah, so it's immigrating. Most Americans don't understand the whole process. It's quite complicated, and almost you have to be lucky as well. So, I was in apartheid South Africa, and I wasn't a supporter of the government as it was, and as a white South African at the end of medical school, all white men at the time would have to spend 2 years in the military. So that's where I was headed. But at the beginning of medical school, my parents immigrated to America. So they moved to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. And so I put my name in for a green card, and a month before the end of my internship, I got a call from the consulate. So I was I responded right away. Before I left South Africa, I was interested in orthopedic surgery. That's really what my interest was. And I went and worked in a small hospital on a Lake Sabaya near Mozambique. So there were 3 of us doctors running the hospital, and it was very, very busy. So we did a lot of, tropical medicine, a lot of anesthesiology and surgeries. It was real hands-on, busy, crazy medicine. And that experience really captured me a little bit. And I thought, well, I really would like to take care of people more in more holistic way rather than just do surgery. So I actually got into a residency that was involved in international medicine as well as family practice, and then I did a master's along the way as well, and then I moved to Louisville at that time and carried on with my practice there. So yeah, I've done a variety of medical sort of experiences along the way. I was doing some research with patients who were quite sick. Actually, they were chronic fatigue patients and fibromyalgia patients, and we were doing an interventional trial using a partial vitamin D receptor agonist. So, and along with that, there was an anti-inflammatory part to this as well. So it wasn't giving people vitamin D, it was a different type of medicine. And we followed these folks' symptoms and their inflammation and their cardiac, the carotid intimal thickness scores. So we watched their aging of their blood vessels. And we were actually quite pleased the first year. The patients were doing better on this protocol. But into the second year, the inflammation increased, the markers increased, and their symptoms worsened. And indeed, even their carotid scores got worse. So, and at the third year, we realized this was not just a subtle change, but definitely a problem. And at the time, I'd heard about Dr. Esselstyn from a patient. So, a patient that came into my room who had a very high cardiac CRP, and multiple members in the family had heart disease. So she used to exercise 40 minutes or more a day. She dieted, tried to lose weight, and she took statins. And I followed those numbers for, close to a decade. So I knew her well, and they didn't really budge much. They came down a little. So she came into my office and gave me a book from Dr. Esselstyn, the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease book. And she said to me, look, I've been doing this for a month. Please check my cardiac CRP. So I thought, well, okay. And she also said, I'd like you to read this book. So I took it, knowing that I probably wouldn't read it, but maybe I'd just leaf through it, maybe, right? But the next morning when I got the results, I was astonished because those numbers had dropped to not just a little bit, but down to 1/4 of the baseline, which was amazing. It was more than just chance. And of course, I did follow down the road, and indeed, it stayed low. The cardiac CRP stayed low. And so she was ecstatic, of course, and she had normal numbers now. And I had this group of patients on the study who all had high inflammation marks, including cardiac CRP numbers and advancing carotid vascular aging. So I thought, well, this might be my solution here, because I was going to exit them off the trial, and I wanted to at least give them a way to reduce the inflammation that we were seeing. So these were really sick people who had been ill for decades. These are very sick. They'd been to all this multiple specialists. So they told me that they would do anything to get better, right? So I thought, of course, everyone's going to do this diet, this lifestyle change. So I went, actually spent time with Dr. Esselstyn, and I learned all about the program, and I started doing myself because I thought, well, heck, this is great. And I put my patients on it, and about half of them did it and half didn't. It was too hard for half. I was like, wow, they said they'll do anything, and this is just food. So, but the astounding thing was that I was thinking heart, but these people weren't heart patients specifically, but their symptoms of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue got better. The folk that actually did it, they all improved, and most of them actually got better. It was like, that's incredible. So I had one patient who had significant encephalitis 30 years before. And he'd been in hospital for more than a month. And for 30 years, he would go through a cycle of being in bed for an entire week and then feeling better and then getting up and working. And each week he would feel more drained. And then finally, the 6th week, he'd be running fevers and so fatigued, he'd have to be in bed for a week. And it was the cycle for 3 decades. And he, since starting this more than a decade ago, he's had 3 days of symptoms. That's it. And he's totally, he leads a normal life. He's very fit, very strong, and aging well. So it's about living well. And so that was my sort of moment where I realized that, yeah, this is actually much more than cardiac health. It's these chronic diseases are all related and linked, and we don't understand them entirely, but we definitely can manipulate them and affect their course and prognosis. So that was my moment when I'm going to do it. Right, and we all have our own health issues and family issues, and things that we don't want to get, and we don't. Being a doctor, I don't want to go to a specialist or another. It's the same as everyone. So doctors get sick too. So I was on board from that moment on. So yeah.
How did you personally transition to a whole food plant-based diet? Did you jump right in and stop this cold?
So I'm always interested. Yeah, I'm always interested because people do it differently. And I think it kind of comes down to people's understanding of what this is all about and what it means to them, and also their persona, but like once I realized how it would benefit me, I couldn't do anything else but this. I had to just jump right in, right? This is what I had to do. And I wasn't one of those folk who could even eat another steak again, right? Even though I had them in the fridge and I gave them away. So, it was someone else who wants to eat that food, let them eat it, but I'm not, So.
Can you tell our viewers how the whole food plant-based nutrition fits into your medical practice?
So, it's, everyone has to eat, right? So, so you talk about food because food affects health, and what are you doing, and did you know that these foods have these outcomes effects? So I talk about what food does to you, because it's not really immediately evident that eating eggs has XYZ risk, and we can compare them to, and so I kind of try to put it into sort of layman's terms so they can identify and really understand it. And so I don't tell people what to eat. I don't tell them they have to do this, but I give them the information so that they can make good decisions. And so it's certainly not alternative. It's certainly not. I don't even think it's holistic medicine, right? I just think it's mainstream. That's the way I see it. I think this is mainstream because there's so much darned research out there that is supportive of this way of life and doing it correctly. That's I think it's my duty to tell people and help them. So that's how I see it. I don't see it as anything special. It's super easy and it's miraculous, actually. So the outcomes on patients, it's just wonderful to see what can happen, when they change the way they eat. Yeah. So the sort of simplistic way of looking at food in terms of weight, I don't think like that, right? I don't think of weight as it's a marker of success in health. But it's so much more, it's so much more. It's about the patient who has advanced vascular disease that now doesn't have to have that stroke or doesn't have to have that heart attack, right? They don't have to. It's a choice. These are once patients understand the actual science behind it. These diseases, when they happen, are actually choice-based. They part of, because it's all in the patient's hands now. It becomes a shared responsibility, health, right? So instead of me being the leader, we share that responsibility, and the patient feels like they can actually be somewhat in charge, and they are in charge, you know. So that's how I approach it. A whole food plant-based diet is one of those super interventions, along with other lifestyle choices, good sleep, good friends, good thoughts, you know, all things that you guys are all about, right? So it's exactly, so that's the difference in my thinking. It's whole food.
What do you think folks should do when their doctors know little about nutrition? Prefer a mainstream approach instead of a preventative approach?
So I think, food's food, right? So it doesn't matter, you know, just because your doctor doesn't know that you can prevent your heart attack through food, doesn't mean say that because he doesn't know or understand it, that it won't work now. You just keep doing it, you know, you just do it. And I think the gold in a good doctor is to have someone who can diagnose you well, who will treat you with respect, you know, including differences when he may still be eating meat and you not, and be able to respect your choices. I think that's important. You know, we're not the same page. All of us are not on the same page, but food is something we do on our own. We decide for ourselves, and you know, it's all about how you do it. That's how it works, not who prescribed it. It's not who, it's not what you're saying about your food, because if you're telling everyone what you're eating and you're just wrong, your body will know. Okay, so food's just food, and so I think it's I think that's not a big deal. I don't think that's a big deal. It's just, you know, feel respect in the doctor's office. Make sure that you have a good relationship. Be well informed. Eat well. Who can argue against that, right? And then reap the benefits. When you eat this way, you need less medicines. If you need medicines, they work better. And your doctor will be happy for that, right? There is a movement. Just moving away from meat is super, right? It's going to treat our planet better. It gives you different respects for the living things in your environment. It's just, and then it's good for you. So people are responsive. I love seeing people who ate like I did in my practice, because I feel I can make a bit of a mark. I think that eating plant-based is not enough if you want to reverse your disease, though. So you have to do more, depending on how sick you are. So there's additional layers. So absolutely, people are very responsible. There are folk that don't want to talk about it. There always will be, and I have to keep reminding myself that I need to respect that, and I do. So you know, that's good. But you know, most people, even if there are meat eaters, I make suggestions like, let's eat 3 fruit a day, and who can argue about that one, right? Or let's add some beans to our diet, and generally when you add these healthy foods, it's going to muscle out some of the alternatives, right? It's making changes. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Last question before we sign off.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your favorite sport. I know you were an athlete, and
that's right.
I'd like to know a little bit about that.
So you know, throughout school, I was a sports crazy kid, right? That's what I did. And my favorite sport was rugby. So you've heard of the game rugby.
Oh, of course.
Not everyone knows. So I lived and breathed rugby. That was it. That probably was my favorite sport ever. But in medical school, I was playing rugby, and I tore my ACL, and I decided that I probably shouldn't play rugby anymore, right? So it was very sad. But all the same, I did like kayaking, and kayaking is very big in South Africa. There's a lot of competition and a lot of fun competition too, just really nice rivers and events. So I started kayaking, and so that became my favorite sport. So I still kayak now, and every year I pick probably a half a dozen races that I go to, and it keeps me in shape, and I love it. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Western North Carolina. There are rivers everywhere, and I've got my basement's full of boats. I've got all kinds of boats for every occasion.
Can't thank you enough again, and we appreciate you so much.
We wanted to tell you that, in case you hadn't noticed, we're both wearing the same t-shirts. They came from another whole food plant-based doctor that we really like. He's a little more famous than ours. His name is Michael Greger, Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org.
And nutritionfacts.org is supporting a program called the Food Empowerment Project to help to bring food to areas where people normally don't have good quality food, low income areas, and also to deal with a lot of food waste, which is a terrible problem.
And other projects that have to do with the food choices that we all make. So you can donate to this project, or you can jump right in and actually volunteer, and we're going to be doing both. So again, check out the link below in the description and see for yourself. They have a really good website that explains it all. Thanks. So friends, we of course would like to read your comments on our interview with Dr. Jonsson and answer any questions that you may have. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.